The girl who was taking care of her sick mother found a mysterious envelope at the door, and what was inside changed their lives forever. The sharp rap of knuckles on wood jolted Olivia from her fitful slumber. She blinked, disoriented, as weak sunlight filtered through the threadbare curtains of the small apartment in Bridgeport, Connecticut. For a moment, she forgot where she was, lost in the haze between dreams and waking. Then reality crashed back, heavy as always. "Mom!" she called out, voice still rough with sleep. No response. Olivia pushed herself up from the worn couch, wincing as her stiff muscles protested. She'd fallen asleep there again, too exhausted to make it to her own bed after a long night of tending to her mother. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. "Coming?" she called, stumbling towards the door. Who could it be at this hour? Bill collectors? The landlord? Olivia's stomach clenched with anxiety. They were behind on rent again, and she didn't know how much longer they could hold on. She opened the door, bracing herself for confrontation, but found only empty air. Confused, Olivia looked down the dimly lit hallway of their apartment building. No one in sight. She was about to close the door when a flash of white caught her eye. There, propped against the doorframe, was a crisp white envelope. Olivia's heart raced as she snatched it up, her name written in elegant script across the front. No return address, no postmark, just her name, Olivia Brennan. She glanced once more down the hall before retreating inside, locking the door behind her. The envelope felt heavy in her hands, substantial, important. "Olivia?" Her mother's weak voice drifted from the bedroom. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, Mom," Olivia called back, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. "Just checking the mail. I'll be right there." She stood frozen in the tiny kitchenette, staring at the envelope. Part of her wanted to tear it open immediately, desperate for any change, any possibility that might alter the grinding monotony of their lives. But another part hesitated, fearing what secrets it might contain. Olivia's entire world had shrunk to the confines of this cramped apartment and the endless cycle of caring for her mother, picking up whatever odd job she could to keep them afloat. At 22, she should have been in college, building a future. Instead, she was trapped, watching her own dreams slip away as surely as her mother's health declined. Margaret Brennan had once been vibrant, full of life and laughter, a talented artist whose paintings captured the beauty of the New England coast. But the diagnosis 2 years ago had changed everything. Multiple sclerosis, progressive and incurable. Now, Margaret was a shadow of her former self, dependent on Olivia for nearly everything. Olivia loved her mother fiercely, but the weight of responsibility sometimes felt crushing. She was so tired, so very tired. The envelope seemed to pulse in her hands, full of possibility, hope, or perhaps just another cruel disappointment. "Olivia?" her mother called again, a note of concern in her voice. Shoving the envelope into the pocket of her wrinkled jeans, Olivia pushed her turbulent thoughts aside. Her mother needed her. The mystery would have to wait. "Coming, Mom," she said, moving towards the bedroom. "How are you feeling this morning?" Margaret lay propped up in bed, her once vibrant red hair now streaked liberally with gray. Her blue eyes, so like Olivia's own, were clouded with pain but brightened at the sight of her daughter. "Oh, you know," Margaret said with a wan smile. Same old, same old. Did I hear someone at the door?" Olivia's hand unconsciously went to her pocket, feeling the crisp edge of the envelope. "No," she lied, hating herself for it. "Just the neighbors. Here, let's get you comfortable and I'll make us some breakfast." As she helped her mother sit up, adjusting pillows and checking that the water glass was within reach, Olivia's mind raced. Who could have left the envelope? What did it contain? And why did she feel so compelled to keep it secret, even from her mother? The morning passed in a blur of familiar routines. Helping her mother eat, administering medication, assisting with physical therapy exercises that seemed to grow more challenging by the day. All the while, the envelope burned in Olivia's pocket, demanding attention. It wasn't until late afternoon, when Margaret had drifted into an uneasy sleep, that Olivia finally had a moment to herself. She slipped out onto the small balcony, really little more than a fire escape with a railing, and pulled out the envelope with trembling hands. The sounds of the city faded away as she carefully broke the seal. Inside, she found a single sheet of heavy paper covered in the same elegant script as the envelope. Dearest Olivia, you don't know me, but I have watched you from afar for many years. Your strength, your compassion, and your unwavering devotion to your mother have touched my heart in ways I cannot fully express. I know the burden you carry. I know the dreams you've set aside, and I want to help. Enclosed, you will find a key. It opens a safety deposit box at the Bridgeport Savings and Loan on Main Street. What you find there will change your life, if you let it. The choice is yours, Olivia. You can ignore this letter, continue on as you have been, and no one will think less of you for it. Or you can take a chance on the unknown and see where it leads. Whatever you decide, know that you are loved, you are seen, and you are not alone. A friend. Olivia read the letter 3 times, her mind reeling. A key, a safety deposit box? Who was this mysterious benefactor, and why her? She tipped the envelope, and sure enough, a small brass key fell into her palm. It looked ordinary enough, but it felt charged with potential, like it could unlock far more than just a metal box. Olivia's thoughts whirled. Should she go to the bank? What if it was some kind of scam? Or worse, something illegal? But then again, what if it wasn't? What if this really was the change they so desperately needed? She thought of her mother, sleeping fitfully in the other room, of the mounting medical bills, of her own deferred dreams, gathering dust like her mother's unused paintbrushes. The sensible thing would be to ignore the letter, to carry on as she had been, head down, one foot in front of the other. It was safer that way, predictable. But as Olivia clutched the key, feeling its weight in her hand, she felt something stirring deep within her, a spark of the girl she used to be before illness and responsibility had dimmed her light. That girl would have leapt at this chance. Consequences be damned. The bank would be closing soon. If she was going to do this, it had to be now. Olivia glanced back through the window at her sleeping mother. "I'll be back soon," she whispered. "I promise." Then, heart pounding, she pocketed the key and letter and slipped out of the apartment. Whatever awaited her at Bridgeport Savings and Loan, Olivia knew one thing for certain. Her life was about to change forever. As she hurried down the busy street, dodging other pedestrians and the occasional splash from passing cars, Olivia's mind raced. Who could have sent the letter? An unknown relative, a secret admirer, or someone with more sinister motives? She was so lost in thought that she almost walked right past the bank. Bridgeport Savings and Loan was an imposing stone building, its facade speaking of stability and tradition. Olivia hesitated at the bottom of the steps, suddenly feeling very small and out of place. "Come on," she muttered to herself. "You've come this far." Taking a deep breath, she climbed the steps and pushed through the heavy doors. The interior was cool and quiet, the late afternoon sun slanting through tall windows. A few customers milled about, but the day was winding down. Olivia approached the information desk, where a middle-aged woman with kind eyes looked up at her. "Can I help you?" the woman asked. Olivia swallowed hard. I need to access a safety deposit box." "Of course. Do you have your key and identification?" Nodding, Olivia produced her driver's license and the small brass key. The woman examined them both, then smiled. "Right this way, Ms. Brennan." As Olivia followed her to a secure area in the back of the bank, her palms began to sweat. This was real. This was happening. In moments, she would know what secret lay waiting for her. The woman unlocked a door and gestured Olivia inside. Rows of metal boxes lined the walls. "Box 317, the woman said, leading her to a specific drawer. "I'll give you some privacy. Just ring the bell when you're finished." And then Olivia was alone, staring at the unremarkable metal box that might just hold the key to her future. With shaking hands, she inserted the key and turned it. The lock clicked open. Olivia took a deep breath, said a silent prayer to whatever higher power might be listening, and lifted the lid. The safety deposit box creaked open, and Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Inside lay a thick manila envelope, a small velvet pouch, and a framed photograph face down. With trembling hands, she reached for the envelope first, its weight substantial in her grip. She slid out a stack of documents, her eyes widening as she scanned the first page. It was a letter, much like the one that had led her here, but this time signed with a name that made her heart skip a beat. Charlotte Brennan. Olivia sank onto the small bench provided in the vault room, her legs suddenly weak. Charlotte Brennan, her grandmother, a woman she'd never met, who had died before Olivia was born, or so she'd always been told. The letter began, "My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, then I'm no longer of this world, and you've finally learned of my existence. I cannot begin to express the sorrow I feel for the years we've lost, or the joy I feel knowing that you found your way to this message at last. There is so much to tell you, so many truths that have been hidden. But first, you must know this. I have loved you from afar every day of your life, and everything I have done, every choice I've made, has been to protect you and your mother." Olivia's mind reeled. Protect them. From what? She read on, her grandmother's elegant script blurring as tears filled her eyes. Charlotte wrote of a family legacy stretching back generations, of wealth and influence, but also of a curse that had plagued the women of their line, a genetic predisposition to early-onset multiple sclerosis, striking down brilliant minds in their prime. Your mother, my beautiful Margaret, was always willful, Charlotte wrote. When the symptoms first appeared, she refused to accept it, refused treatment, refused help. She was determined to live her life on her own terms, consequences be damned. And so, with a heavy heart, I made the most difficult decision of my life. I let her go. I watched from the shadows as she struggled, as you were born, as you grew into the remarkable young woman you are today. It broke my heart 1,000 times over, but I truly believed it was for the best. I was wrong, Olivia. I see that now. I should have fought harder, should have found a way to help without taking away Margaret's autonomy, but I cannot change the past. I can only hope to make amends for the future. The letter went on, detailing the contents of the safety deposit box. The velvet pouch contained a family heirloom, a sapphire pendant that had been passed down through generations. And the documents. Olivia's hands shook as she realized what they were. Trust funds, property deeds, stock certificates, a fortune that had been accumulating for years, waiting for her. It's all yours now, my darling girl, Charlotte wrote. Use it to care for your mother, to pursue your dreams, to live the life you deserve. And please, if you can find it in your heart, forgive an old woman's misguided attempts to protect her family. With all my love, Charlotte. Olivia sat in stunned silence, the letter clutched to her chest. Her mind whirled with questions, with possibilities, with a strange mix of anger and relief. They'd struggled for so long, and all this time. She reached for the framed photograph, turning it over slowly. There, smiling back at her, were 3 women. Her mother, younger and radiant, her arms wrapped around a slightly older woman who could only be Charlotte, and between them, a toddler with bright eyes and a mischievous grin. Herself. A family. Whole and happy, before illness and misunderstanding tore them apart. Olivia didn't know how long she sat there, absorbing the weight of these revelations. It wasn't until a gentle knock on the door startled her that she realized how much time had passed. Mrs. Brennan, the kind-eyed woman from earlier, called. Is everything all right? Hastily wiping her eyes, Olivia gathered the contents of the box. Yes, she called back, her voice thick with emotion. I'll be right out. She tucked everything carefully into her bag, pausing only to clasp the sapphire pendant around her neck. Its weight felt right somehow, a tangible connection to the grandmother she'd never known. As Olivia stepped out of the vault, blinking in the now dimmed light of the bank lobby, her mind raced with all that lay ahead. How would she tell her mother? How would Margaret react to learning her own mother had been watching over them all this time? And what of their future? The money changed everything, opening doors Olivia had long thought locked. But it also brought complications, questions of identity and forgiveness that wouldn't be easily answered. Lost in thought, Olivia barely registered the concerned looks from the bank staff as she made her way outside. The streets of Bridgeport had quieted, the day's bustle giving way to the softer rhythms of evening. She stood on the steps of the bank, feeling the weight of her bag, of the pendant, of all she'd learned. For so long, Olivia had felt trapped, suffocating under the weight of responsibility and limited options. But now the world suddenly felt vast with possibility. It was exhilarating and terrifying. She took a deep breath, feeling the cool evening air fill her lungs. One step at a time, she told herself. First, she needed to get home to her mother, to begin the process of unraveling years of secrets and half-truths, to start building a new future, one where they weren't alone in their struggles. As Olivia began the walk home, her steps felt lighter than they had in years. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, she knew. There would be difficult conversations, painful revelations, bridges to rebuild. But for the first time in so long, there was also hope. She fingered the sapphire pendant, imagining her grandmother's hands crafting the letter, selecting the heirloom, watching over them from afar all these years. There was anger there, yes, at the lost time and unnecessary hardship. But there was also a profound gratitude and a budding curiosity about the woman who had loved them enough to let them go. Olivia rounded the corner to her street, the familiar sight of their run-down apartment building coming into view. For a moment, she hesitated. Once she walked through that door and shared what she'd learned, nothing would ever be the same. But as she climbed the stairs, key in hand, Olivia felt a surge of determination. They'd weathered so much already. She and her mother. Whatever came next, they would face it together. She paused at the apartment door, took a steadying breath, and stepped inside. "Mom?" she called out, her voice wavering slightly. "Are you awake? There's something I need to tell you." Margaret's voice drifted from the bedroom, a note of concern evident even through her fatigue. "Olivia? Is everything all right, sweetheart?" Olivia moved towards her mother's room, her heart pounding. How do you even begin to explain something like this? She fingered the sapphire pendant, drawing strength from its solid presence. "I'm not sure," Olivia said honestly as she entered the small bedroom. "But I think things might be about to change, for both of us." Margaret struggled to sit up, her brow furrowed with worry. "What's going on? Where have you been?" Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, taking her mother's frail hand in her own. The contrast between this Margaret and the vibrant woman in the photograph was stark, painful. But as Olivia met her mother's concerned gaze, she saw the same strength, the same fierce love that had carried them through so much. Mom," Olivia began, her voice soft but steady. "What do you remember about your mother?" Margaret's eyes widened in surprise, then clouded with a mix of emotions Olivia couldn't quite decipher. "My mother, Olivia, what's this about?" Slowly, carefully, Olivia began to explain. About the mysterious envelope, the safety deposit box, the letter from Charlotte. With each revelation, she watched her mother's face, seeing shock, disbelief, anger, and a profound sadness play across her features. When Olivia finally fell silent, the room was thick with unspoken questions and long-buried emotions. Margaret sat very still, her eyes fixed on a point somewhere beyond Olivia, lost in memories or regrets. "Mom," Olivia prompted gently. "Please, say something." Margaret's gaze snapped back to her daughter, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh, Olivia," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't think." She trailed off, overcome. Olivia squeezed her hand, offering what comfort she could. "It's okay, Mom," she said. "We'll figure this out together. But first, I think there's someone you need to see." Reaching into her bag, Olivia pulled out the framed photograph. She held it out to her mother, watching as Margaret's trembling fingers traced the outlines of the faces captured there. "Oh," Margaret breathed, a sob catching in her throat. "Oh, Mom." As the night deepened around them, mother and daughter clung to each other, weeping for all that had been lost and all that might yet be found. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was also filled with possibility. Outside their window, a gentle breeze stirred the leaves of the old oak tree that had stood sentinel over their struggles for so long. And if one looked closely, they might almost see the ghostly figure of a woman watching over them, her eyes filled with love and the faintest glimmer of hope. The morning sun crept through the threadbare curtains, painting the small apartment in a soft, golden light. Olivia stirred, momentarily disoriented. She'd fallen asleep in her mother's bed, both of them exhausted from the emotional maelstrom of the previous night. As the fog of sleep lifted, the events of yesterday came rushing back. The letter, the safety deposit box, the revelations about her grandmother Charlotte. It felt like a dream, but the weight of the sapphire pendant still around her neck anchored her to reality. Beside her, Margaret slept fitfully, her brow furrowed even in repose. Olivia watched her mother's chest rise and fall, wondering what dreams or memories might be playing out behind her closed eyelids. Carefully, so as not to wake her, Olivia slipped out of bed. There was so much to do, so much to process. But first, coffee. She padded to the tiny kitchen, her mind whirling with possibilities and questions. As the coffee maker gurgled to life, Olivia's gaze fell on the stack of documents she'd brought home from the bank. In the harsh light of morning, it all seemed so surreal. A fortune at their fingertips, a family history rewritten. Where did they even begin? "Olivia?" Her mother's voice, still rough with sleep, called from the bedroom. "Coming, Mom," Olivia replied, quickly pouring 2 mugs of coffee. She returned to find Margaret struggling to sit up, her movements stiff and pained. "Here, let me help," Olivia said, setting the mugs aside and gently supporting her mother. As she adjusted the pillows, their eyes met, and a moment of understanding passed between them. Yesterday hadn't been a dream for either of them. "How are you feeling?" Olivia asked, handing Margaret her coffee. Margaret took a long sip before answering, her gaze distant. "Overwhelmed," she admitted. "Angry, confused, grateful." She looked up at Olivia, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I don't know how to feel about any of this, sweetheart." Olivia perched on the edge of the bed, cradling her own mug. "I know," she said softly. "Me neither, but we'll figure it out together, okay?" Margaret nodded, reaching out to squeeze her daughter's hand. "Together," she agreed. Then, with a wry smile that was a shadow of her old self, she added, "Though I suppose the first order of business should be getting me to a doctor. A real one, not just the free clinic." Olivia felt a lump form in her throat. How long had her mother been downplaying her symptoms, knowing they couldn't afford proper care? "Absolutely," she said, forcing brightness into her voice. "I'll start making calls this morning. Maybe we can even look into some experimental treatments or—" "Slow down, sweetheart," Margaret interrupted gently. "One step at a time, remember? We don't even know the full extent of what your grandmother left us yet." Olivia nodded, chastened but still buzzing with nervous energy. "You're right. I'll go through everything today, make some lists, figure out our options." As she spoke, a notification chimed on her phone. Olivia glanced at it absently, then did a double-take. It was an email from Bridgeport Savings and Loan, confirming an appointment she didn't remember making. "Now that's odd," she murmured, opening the message. "Dear Ms. Brennan, this email is to confirm your appointment with Mr. Adrian Foster, Senior Financial Advisor, today at 2 p.m. Mr. Foster specializes in managing complex estates and trusts, and he has been briefed on your unique situation. If you need to reschedule or have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Best regards, Bridgeport Savings and Loan." Olivia read the email aloud to her mother, confusion evident in her voice. "I didn't make this appointment," she said. "Do you think—" "Charlotte," Margaret finished, her tone unreadable. She must have arranged it. Always thinking 10 steps ahead, even from beyond the grave. There was a bitterness in her mother's voice that made Olivia wince. The wounds here ran deep, she realized. Healing them wouldn't be as simple as paying off medical bills or moving to a better apartment. "Should I go?" Olivia asked hesitantly. Margaret was quiet for a long moment, absently tracing the rim of her coffee mug. Finally, she looked up, determination glinting in her eyes. We should both go," she said firmly. "Whatever comes next, we face it as a family. No more secrets, no more hiding." Olivia felt a swell of emotion, equal parts pride and love for her mother's strength. "Okay," she said, smiling through the tears that threatened. "Then we'd better get you ready. It's been a while since you've been out, and Bridgeport Savings and Loan is a far cry from the free clinic." The next few hours passed in a flurry of activity. Olivia helped her mother bathe and dress, a task made easier by the anticipation of finally leaving the apartment for something other than a doctor's appointment. She even convinced Margaret to let her apply a touch of makeup, bringing some color back to her pale cheeks. As Olivia rummaged through their meager closet, looking for something suitable to wear to a meeting with a financial advisor, she couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Yesterday, their biggest concern had been making rent. Today, they were preparing to discuss a fortune. "What's so funny?" Margaret called from the living room, where she was resting in her wheelchair. Olivia emerged from the bedroom, holding up 2 slightly wrinkled blouses. "Just thinking about how quickly life can change," she said, opting for the blue top that brought out her eyes. "You know, I think this is the first time I've seen you excited about leaving the apartment in, well, a long time." Margaret's smile was tinged with sadness. "It's been easier to stay in, to hide from the world," she admitted. "But maybe it's time to start living again, not just existing." Olivia knelt beside her mother's wheelchair, taking her hands. "Whatever happens with this money, with Charlotte's legacy, that's what I want most. For both of us to really live again." They held each other's gaze for a moment, years of shared struggle and unspoken dreams passing between them. Then Margaret straightened, adjusting her shirt with as much dignity as she could muster. "Well then," she said briskly, "let's not keep Mr. Foster waiting. We have a life to start living." The journey to Bridgeport Savings and Loan was an adventure in itself. Navigating public transportation with a wheelchair proved challenging, but Olivia was buoyed by her mother's determination. Margaret's eyes were bright, taking in the city around them as if seeing it for the first time. As they approached the imposing stone building, however, Olivia felt her nervousness return. What awaited them inside? How would this meeting change their lives? "Ready?" she asked, pausing at the bottom of the steps. Margaret reached up to clasp her daughter's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Ready," she confirmed. "Whatever comes next, we're in this together." With a deep breath, Olivia began to push her mother's wheelchair up the ramp, towards whatever future awaited them behind those heavy oak doors. The interior of Bridgeport Savings and Loan was cool and hushed, a world away from the bustling street outside. Olivia approached the reception desk, acutely aware of her wrinkled blouse and her mother's well-worn wheelchair. "Olivia and Margaret Brennan," she said, trying to project a confidence she didn't feel. "We have an appointment with Mr. Foster." The receptionist's polite smile warmed as she glanced at her computer screen. "Of course, Ms. Brennan, Mr. Foster is expecting you. Please, follow me." As they were led through a maze of polished corridors, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that they were imposters, about to be found out at any moment. But every staff member they passed greeted them with genuine warmth, as if they belonged here among the marble and mahogany. Finally, they arrived at a spacious office with a spectacular view of the Bridgeport skyline. A distinguished-looking man with salt-and-pepper hair rose from behind an imposing desk, his smile reaching all the way to his kind eyes. "Ms. Brennan, Mrs. Brennan," he greeted them, moving around the desk to shake their hands. "I'm Adrian Foster. It's a pleasure to finally meet you both." As they settled in, Olivia in a plush leather chair, Margaret's wheelchair positioned comfortably beside her, Mr. Foster's warmth put them at ease. He didn't seem at all fazed by their obvious nervousness or out-of-place appearance. I understand you've had quite the revelation recently, he began, his tone gentle. Charlotte Brennan was a remarkable woman and a valued client for many years. She spoke of you often, always with great love and pride. Margaret stiffened slightly at the mention of her mother, but said nothing. Olivia squeezed her hand supportively before addressing Mr. Foster. To be honest, we're not entirely sure why we're here, she admitted. We know there's money, a trust, I think, but beyond that, Mr. Foster nodded understandingly. Of course, Charlotte left very specific instructions about how to proceed once you made contact. With your permission, I'd like to give you an overview of your financial situation, and then we can discuss your options moving forward. At their nods of agreement, he turned to his computer, bringing up a series of charts and documents on a large screen mounted on the wall. What followed was a dizzying array of numbers and terms that made Olivia's head spin. Trust funds, investment portfolios, real estate holdings. The scope of Charlotte's legacy was staggering. In total, Mr. Foster concluded, the Brennan Family Trust is currently valued at approximately $68 million. Olivia felt the room tilt slightly. Beside her, Margaret let out a small gasp. $68 million? Olivia repeated, certain she must have misheard. Mr. Foster's smile was sympathetic. I understand it's a lot to take in, but please, try not to focus on the number right now. Instead, let's talk about what this means for you, practically speaking. Over the next hour, he outlined the structure of the trust, the provisions Charlotte had put in place, and the immediate steps they could take to address their most pressing needs. There were funds available for Margaret's medical care, for securing more suitable housing, for Olivia's education if she chose to pursue it. The goal, Mr. Foster explained, is to provide you with security and opportunity, without overwhelming you. Charlotte was adamant that this fortune should enhance your lives, not complicate them. As the meeting drew to a close, Olivia's mind was reeling with possibilities. For the first time in years, the future seemed wide open, full of promise instead of dread. Take some time to process all of this, Mr. Foster advised as they prepared to leave. I'll have my assistant schedule a follow-up appointment for next week. In the meantime, here's my card. Please, don't hesitate to call if you have any questions or concerns. As they made their way out of the bank, both Olivia and Margaret were uncharacteristically quiet, lost in their own thoughts. It wasn't until they were back on the bustling sidewalk that Margaret spoke, her voice thick with emotion. She really did love us, didn't she? She said softly, looking up at Olivia. All those years, even when we thought she'd abandoned us, she was watching over us, planning for our future. Olivia knelt beside her mother's wheelchair, heedless of the curious glances from passers-by. She did, she agreed, her own eyes filling with tears. And now we have a chance to live the life she wanted for us. To really live, Mom. Margaret reached out, cupping her daughter's face in her trembling hands. Oh, my brave girl, she said, her smile watery but genuine. What do we do now? Olivia stood, squaring her shoulders as she took the handles of the wheelchair. She looked out at the city around them, seeing it with new eyes. No longer a place of struggle and limitation, but a world of opportunity. Now, she said, her voice filled with determination and hope, we start living. As they made their way home, plans and dreams bubbling between them, neither noticed the elegant older woman watching from across the street. Charlotte Brennan's ghost smiled, a tear slipping down her ethereal cheek, before fading into the afternoon sunlight. Her girls were going to be all right, at last. The weeks following their meeting with Mr. Foster passed in a whirlwind of activity. Olivia and Margaret's small apartment, once a prison of limited options, now buzzed with a constant stream of healthcare professionals, real estate agents, and financial advisors. On a bright Tuesday morning, Olivia stood in the center of their living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes and scattered papers. She rubbed her temples, trying to ward off an impending headache. The sheer number of decisions they faced was overwhelming. Olivia? Margaret called from her bedroom. Can you come here for a moment? Grateful for the distraction, Olivia made her way to her mother's room. She found Margaret sitting up in bed, a tablet propped on her lap. her face etched with concentration. "What's up, Mom?" Olivia asked, perching on the edge of the bed. Margaret looked up, a mix of excitement and trepidation in her eyes. "I've been researching some of those experimental treatments Mr. Foster mentioned," she said. "There's a clinic in Boston that's doing amazing work with stem cell therapy for MS patients. I think I want to try it." Olivia felt a surge of hope, tempered by caution. They'd been down this road before, chasing miracle cures that never materialized. But this time was different. This time, they had resources. "That's great, Mom," she said, squeezing Margaret's hand. "I will make some calls, see if we can set up a consultation." Margaret nodded, then hesitated. "There's something else," she said softly. "I know we've been looking at apartments in the city, but I've been thinking maybe it's time for a bigger change." Olivia tilted her head, curious. "What kind of change?" "I found this place," Margaret said, turning the tablet to show Olivia a listing for a sprawling Victorian house on the coast of Maine. "It's not far from that Boston clinic and, well, just look at it." Olivia scrolled through the photos, her breath catching. The house was beautiful, perched on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. Sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating airy rooms and gleaming hardwood floors. The property included a smaller guest house and, most intriguingly, a spacious art studio. "Mom," Olivia breathed, "it's gorgeous. But Maine, that's a big move." Margaret's eyes shone with a light Olivia hadn't seen in years. "I know it's crazy," she said, "but ever since that day at the bank, I can't stop thinking about what you said, about really living, not just existing." She gestured at the walls around them. "We've been trapped here for so long, weighed down by illness and worry. Maybe it's time for a fresh start. Somewhere we can both heal." Olivia stared at the images on the tablet, her mind whirling. She thought about her mother's paintings, gathering dust in storage, about the dreams she'd set aside, the life she'd put on hold. A part of her wanted to cling to the familiar, to stay in the city where at least she knew the rules of survival. But as she looked at her mother, seeing the hope and determination in her eyes, Olivia felt something shift inside her. Why not Maine? Why not a grand adventure? "Okay," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Let's do it." Margaret's face lit up. "Really? You're sure?" Olivia laughed, a sound of pure joy that felt foreign in her throat. "No, I'm not sure at all," she admitted. "But that's kind of exciting, isn't it? Let's call the realtor." The next few days were a frenzy of activity. They scheduled a viewing of the main property, coordinated with Mr. Foster to handle the financial aspects, and began the process of untangling their lives from the city that had been both home and cage for so long. As Olivia packed up their meager belongings, she found herself lingering over small mementos: a chipped mug from her college days, a faded photograph of her and Margaret at the beach years ago. Each item held a weight of memory, of struggles overcome and dreams deferred. "You okay, sweetheart?" Margaret asked, wheeling into the room. Her movements were smoother now, thanks to the new state-of-the-art wheelchair they'd purchased. It was a small change, but one that had already made a world of difference in her mobility and comfort. Olivia smiled, setting down the photograph. "Yeah, just remembering. It's strange, isn't it? A week ago, I couldn't wait to leave this place. Now, I'm feeling almost nostalgic." Margaret nodded, understanding. "It's okay to have mixed feelings," she said gently. "This apartment saw us through some dark times, but it also saw our strength, our love for each other. We're not leaving those behind." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "When did you get so wise?" she teased, trying to lighten the moment. "Oh, I've always been wise," Margaret retorted with a wink. "You were just too busy taking care of me to notice." They shared a laugh, the sound chasing away the shadows of the past. As they resumed packing, Olivia felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yes, they were leaving behind the familiar, but they were moving towards something greater, a future full of possibility. The day of their flight to Maine dawned clear and bright. Olivia woke early, her stomach a tangle of nerves and excitement. She helped Margaret dress and get settled in her wheelchair, both of them taking extra care with their appearance. Today wasn't just a trip, it was the beginning of a new chapter. As they made their way through the bustling airport, Olivia couldn't help but marvel at how different everything felt. The first-class tickets in her hand, the ease with which they navigated the terminals thanks to the airport's assistance, it was a far cry from their usual stressed, budget-conscious travel. "Ms. Brennan?" A smartly dressed woman approached them at the gate. "I'm Simone, from the airline's concierge service. We've been expecting you. May I assist you to the lounge?" Margaret looked at Olivia, eyebrows raised in surprise. Olivia shrugged, a small smile playing on her lips. "Thank you, Simone. That would be lovely." As they settled into the plush seats of the first-class lounge, sipping complimentary champagne and watching the planes take off and land, the reality of their situation began to sink in. "I keep waiting for someone to tell us there's been a mistake," Margaret confessed, her voice low. "That we don't belong here." Olivia reached over, squeezing her mother's hand. "I know what you mean," she said, "but we do belong here, Mom. This is our life now. We just have to learn how to live it." Margaret nodded, taking a deep breath. "You're right. No more hiding, no more settling for less. From now on, we reach for the stars." "To new beginnings," Olivia said, raising her glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," Margaret echoed, clinking her glass against her daughter's. As they boarded the plane, Olivia felt a sense of lightness she hadn't experienced in years. The weight of constant worry, of making ends meet, of watching her mother's health decline. It wasn't gone entirely, but it had shifted. In its place was a bubbling excitement for what lay ahead. The flight passed in a blur of comfort and attentive service. Olivia found herself dozing off, lulled by the hum of the engines and the knowledge that, for once, she didn't need to be constantly vigilant. She woke as they began their descent into Portland, Maine. Out the window, she could see the coastline coming into view, a patchwork of green forests and rocky shores. It was beautiful, wild in a way that made her heart ache with possibility. "Mom, look," she said, gently rousing Margaret. "We're almost there." Margaret blinked awake, her eyes widening as she took in the view. "Oh, Olivia," she breathed, "it's like a painting." As they disembarked, the crisp Maine air hit them like a wake-up call. It smelled of salt and pine, so different from the city smog they were used to. A sleek town car was waiting to take them to the Victorian house, their potential new home. The drive along the coast was nothing short of magical. Around every bend, a new vista opened up, quaint fishing villages, lighthouses standing sentinel on rocky outcroppings, forests that seemed to whisper of hidden wonders. When they finally pulled up to the house, Olivia felt her breath catch. The photos hadn't done it justice. It stood proud and elegant against the backdrop of the churning Atlantic, its weathered shingles and intricate gingerbread trim speaking of a rich history. "Oh my," Margaret whispered, her eyes wide as saucers. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined." The realtor, a cheerful woman named Beth, greeted them warmly. "Welcome to Sea Breeze," she said, gesturing to the house. "Shall we take a look inside?" As Beth led them through the house, pointing out original features and recent updates, Olivia found herself falling in love. The rooms were spacious and filled with light, the antique fixtures blending seamlessly with modern amenities. But it was the art studio that truly captured her heart. Located in the guest house, the studio was an artist's dream. Large windows providing perfect natural light, ample storage for supplies, and a small kitchenette for those long creative sessions. Olivia could already imagine her mother working here, rekindling her passion for painting. "Mom," she said, turning to find Margaret with tears in her eyes. "What do you think?" Margaret looked around the studio, then out at the ocean view. When she met Olivia's gaze, her smile was radiant. "I think," she said softly, "that we're home." The word hung in the air between them, full of promise and new beginnings. Home. Not just a place to exist, but a place to thrive, to heal, to rediscover joy. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Olivia and Margaret stood on the wraparound porch, taking in the view that was now theirs. The sound of waves crashing against the rocks below was a soothing rhythm, a constant reminder of the beauty and power of change. "Are you ready for this?" Olivia asked, her arm around her mother's shoulders. Margaret reached up, clasping her daughter's hand. "With you by my side, I'm ready for anything." As twilight deepened into night, stars began to appear, brighter and more numerous than they'd ever seen in the city. Olivia felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. They had faced so many storms together, she and her mother. Now, finally, they had found their safe harbor. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Margaret's treatments, adjusting to their new life, learning to navigate the world of wealth and opportunity, they would face them together. Here, in this house by the sea, they had the chance to write a new story, a story of healing, of rediscovery, of love that transcends generations. Olivia took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the salt-tinged air. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt truly, vibrantly alive. The future stretched out before them, as vast and full of possibility as the ocean itself. "Welcome home, Mom," she whispered, giving Margaret's hand a gentle squeeze. Margaret's answering smile was brighter than any star. "Welcome home, my brave girl." The crisp autumn air carried the scent of salt and pine as Olivia made her way down the winding path to the beach. It had been 3 months since she and Margaret had moved into Seabreeze, their Victorian house on the Maine coast, and each day still felt like a new adventure. She paused at the edge of the water, watching the waves crash against the rocky shore. The rhythmic sound had become a constant in their lives, a soothing backdrop to the whirlwind of changes they'd experienced. "Olivia," her mother's voice carried on the wind. Turning, Olivia saw Margaret making her way down the path, her electric wheelchair easily navigating the smooth surface they'd had installed shortly after moving in. "Mom, what are you doing out here?" Olivia called, jogging back up to meet her. "Aren't you supposed to be resting before your treatment tomorrow?" Margaret's laugh was light, freer than Olivia had heard in years. "I've rested enough," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Besides, I wanted to show you something." Intrigued, Olivia fell into step beside her mother as they made their way back to the house. Instead of going inside, Margaret led them around to the guest house that had been converted into her art studio. "Close your eyes," Margaret instructed as they reached the door. Olivia complied, a mix of curiosity and anticipation building in her chest. She heard the door open, felt her mother gently guide her inside. The familiar scent of oil paints and turpentine filled her nostrils. "Okay," Margaret said, excitement evident in her voice. "Open them." Olivia's eyes fluttered open, and she gasped. The studio walls were covered in canvases, each alive with color and movement. Seascapes, portraits, abstract pieces. Her mother's distinctive style was evident in each one, but there was a vibrancy, an energy that Olivia had never seen before in Margaret's work. "Mom," she breathed, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "These are incredible. When did you—" Margaret wheeled further into the room, her gaze roaming over her creations. "I've been coming out here whenever you're in town or meeting with Mr. Foster," she admitted. "At first, it was just to sit and look at the ocean. But then one day, I picked up a brush and, well," she gestured at the paintings surrounding them. "It was like coming home." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. Her mother, who had been so diminished by illness and circumstance, was coming back to life before her very eyes. "They're beautiful," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're beautiful." Margaret reached out, clasping Olivia's hand. "It's all because of you, sweetheart. Your strength, your courage in facing this new life. It's inspired me. Made me want to find my own strength again." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, surrounded by the vibrant evidence of Margaret's rekindled passion. Then Margaret spoke again, her tone more serious. "There's something else I wanted to talk to you about," she said. "I've been thinking, maybe it's time you started living your own life, too." Olivia blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" Margaret wheeled over to the studio's large windows, gazing out at the ocean. "You've put your whole life on hold to take care of me," she said softly, "and I'm more grateful than I can ever express. But Olivia, you're young. You should be out there pursuing your own dreams, not just managing mine. Mom, Olivia started, but Margaret held up a hand. Let me finish, she said gently. I know you've been talking to Mr. Foster about possibly going back to school. I think you should do it. With the treatments I'm getting and the help we can now afford, I'll be okay. It's time for you to spread your wings. Olivia felt a complex swirl of emotions: hope, fear, excitement, guilt. The idea of going back to school, of pursuing the career in marine biology she'd always dreamed of, was tantalizing. But the thought of leaving her mother, even if it wasn't far— I don't know, she said hesitantly. What if something happens? What if you need me? Margaret turned back to face her daughter, her expression full of love and determination. Life is full of what-ifs, sweetheart. We can't let fear of the unknown hold us back, not anymore. She reached out, taking Olivia's hands in hers. You've given me back my life, my passion. Now it's time for you to reclaim yours. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. Are you sure? She whispered. More sure than I've been about anything in a long time, Margaret replied, her own eyes glistening. You deserve this, Olivia. We both do. As if on cue, a sharp gust of wind rattled the studio windows. Outside, the sky had darkened, heavy clouds rolling in from the sea. The sudden shift seemed symbolic somehow, a reminder of how quickly life could change. Looks like a storm's coming in, Olivia observed, wiping her eyes. Margaret nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Good thing we have a strong foundation now, she said, giving Olivia's hand a squeeze. They made their way back to the main house just as the first fat raindrops began to fall. Inside, the warm glow of lamps and the crackling of a fire in the hearth created a cozy atmosphere that still felt a bit unreal to Olivia. This beautiful home, this new life, sometimes it all seemed like a dream. As Margaret settled into her favorite armchair by the fire, Olivia busied herself in the kitchen, preparing tea and a light dinner. Her mind whirled with possibilities, going back to school, pursuing her passion for marine biology. It was everything she'd ever wanted. But the idea of leaving her mother, of not being there every day to ensure she was okay, it terrified her. I can hear you thinking from here, Margaret called from the living room, amusement in her voice. Come sit with me, sweetheart. Let's talk this through. Olivia brought their tea and a plate of sandwiches, settling onto the plush sofa across from her mother. Outside, the storm had picked up, rain lashing against the windows and wind howling around the eaves of the old house. It's not that I don't want to go back to school, Olivia began, cradling her mug of tea. It's just, we've been through so much together. The idea of not being here, of something happening while I'm away. Margaret nodded, understanding. I know, honey, and I love you for it. But we can't let fear dictate our lives anymore. We have resources now, remember? We can hire help, set up systems to make sure I'm taken care of. And you wouldn't be far. There are excellent marine biology programs right here in Maine. Olivia took a sip of her tea, letting the warmth soothe her. I guess I'm just not used to thinking about my own future, she admitted. For so long, it was all about survival, about making it to the next day. And you were amazing, Margaret said softly. You kept us both going through the darkest times. But now it's time to thrive, not just survive. You deserve a chance to chase your dreams, Olivia. As if to punctuate her words, a brilliant flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed by a resounding crack of thunder. Both women jumped, then laughed at their shared reaction. Well, if that's not a sign, I don't know what is, Margaret chuckled. Olivia felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of tension she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. Okay, she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. Okay, let's do it. Let's look into schools, figure out how to make this work. Margaret's face lit up with joy. Really? Oh, Olivia, I'm so proud of you. As the storm raged outside, mother and daughter spent the evening researching universities, poring over course catalogs, and dreaming of the future. With each program they explored, each possibility they discussed, Olivia felt her excitement grow. This was really happening. She was going to get a chance at the life she'd always imagined. Later that night, as the storm began to abate, Olivia stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the churning sea. The moon had broken through the clouds, casting a silvery path across the waves. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the struggles, the pain, the unexpected twist of fate that had changed everything. A soft knock at her door pulled her from her reverie. "Come in," she called. Margaret entered, moving smoothly in her wheelchair. "I couldn't sleep," she said, coming to join Olivia at the window. "Too excited, I think." Olivia smiled, wrapping an arm around her mother's shoulders. "Me too," she admitted. "It's all happening so fast. Sometimes I still can't believe it's real." Margaret looked up at her daughter, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "It's real, sweetheart, and you deserve every bit of it. I want you to promise me something, though." "Anything," Olivia said without hesitation. "Promise me that you'll embrace this new chapter fully, that you won't let worry for me hold you back. I'm going to be fine, better than fine. It's time for both of us to live the lives we were meant to." Olivia felt a lump form in her throat. "I promise," she whispered. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching as the last of the storm clouds drifted away, revealing a sky full of stars. Each pinprick of light seemed to represent a possibility, a dream waiting to be realized. "You know," Margaret said softly, "your grandmother Charlotte once told me that life is like the sea, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy, but always full of hidden treasures if you're brave enough to dive deep." Olivia smiled at the thought of the grandmother she'd never known, whose love and foresight had made this new life possible. "She sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Margaret agreed, "and I think she'd be very proud of us both right now." As the first light of dawn began to paint the horizon, Olivia felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. The future stretched out before them, as vast and full of possibility as the ocean outside their window. There would be challenges ahead, no doubt: Margaret's ongoing treatments, the adjustment to student life, learning to balance independence with the deep bond they shared. But for the first time in years, those challenges felt like adventures to be embraced, not obstacles to be feared. "To new beginnings," Olivia said softly, echoing the toast they'd shared on that first flight to Maine. Margaret reached up, squeezing her daughter's hand. "To new beginnings," she echoed, "and to the wonderful women we're becoming." As the sun rose over the Atlantic, bathing their home in golden light, Olivia felt her heart swell with hope and love. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. Two women, stronger than they'd ever been, ready to embrace the tides of change and all the wonders they might bring. The campus of the University of Maine buzzed with the energy of a new semester. Students hurried across the quad, laden with books and hope, their chatter filling the crisp autumn air. Among them, Olivia Brennan stood still, drinking in the scene with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. At 23, she was older than most of the freshmen surrounding her, but the years melted away as she clutched her class schedule, feeling every bit the nervous new student. It had been a whirlwind few months since that stormy night when she and her mother had decided it was time for Olivia to pursue her dreams. Now, here she was, about to start her first day of classes in the marine biology program. It felt surreal, like stepping into a life she'd only imagined during those long, dark nights of caring for her mother. "You've got this," Olivia whispered to herself, squaring her shoulders and taking a deep breath. With one last glance at the stately buildings around her, she set off toward her first class, Introduction to Oceanography. The lecture hall was already half full when Olivia arrived. She chose a seat near the middle, not wanting to appear too eager by sitting in the front row, but also determined not to hide in the back. As she settled in, pulling out her laptop and notebook, a friendly voice came from her left. "Is this seat taken?" Olivia looked up to see a young woman with bright green hair and a warm smile. "No, go ahead," she replied, gesturing to the empty chair. "Thanks, I'm Zoe," the woman said, plopping down beside Olivia. "First year?" Olivia nodded, feeling a bit self-conscious. "Yeah, though I'm a bit older than most freshmen. I'm Olivia." Zoe's smile widened. "Oh, cool. Me too. I worked for a few years after high school before deciding to come back. It's nice not to be the only old one here. Olivia felt herself relax a bit. Old at 23, she chuckled. Who would have thought? Their conversation was cut short as the professor strode in, a tall woman with salt and pepper hair and an air of undeniable authority. Welcome to Introduction to Oceanography, she began, her voice carrying easily through the hall. I'm Dr. Amelia Harding, and I'm here to show you just how little we truly know about our planet's oceans. As Dr. Harding launched into her lecture, Olivia found herself completely engrossed. The mysteries of the deep sea, the complex ecosystems of coral reefs, the impact of climate change on marine life, it was everything she'd dreamed of studying and more. The 2-hour class flew by, and as students began packing up their things, Olivia felt a surge of certainty. This was where she belonged. That was amazing, Zoe gushed as they left the hall together. I mean, I knew the ocean was big, but I had no idea how much we still don't know about it. Olivia nodded enthusiastically. It's incredible, isn't it? All those unexplored areas, undiscovered species, it's like a whole other world down there. As they walked across campus, comparing schedules and discovering they shared several classes, Olivia felt a warmth spreading through her chest. It wasn't just the excitement of learning, but the simple joy of making a new friend, of being a normal student with normal concerns. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out to see a text from her mother. How's your first day going, sweetheart? Knock their socks off. Olivia smiled, quickly typing back. It's great, Mom. Made a friend already. How are you feeling? The reply came almost instantly. So proud of you. I'm good. Just finished a painting. Can't wait to show you when you get home. A pang of guilt hit Olivia. Here she was, reveling in her new life, while her mother was at home alone. But before the feeling could take root, she remembered their conversation from that stormy night. Her mother wanted this for her, had practically pushed her out the door this morning, insisting that Olivia embrace every moment of her college experience. Everything okay? Zoe asked, noticing Olivia's momentary distraction. Olivia nodded, pocketing her phone. Yeah, just checking in with my mom. She's been sick for a long time. This is the first time I've really been away from her. Zoe's expression softened with understanding. That must be tough, she said gently. But it's great that you're here, pursuing your dreams. I'm sure she's really proud of you. She is, Olivia agreed, feeling a rush of love and gratitude for her mother's unwavering support. It's just a big change, you know? As they made their way to the campus coffee shop, Olivia found herself opening up to Zoe about her past, the years of struggle, her mother's illness, and the unexpected twist of fate that had changed everything. It felt good to share her story, to acknowledge both where she'd come from and where she was going. Wow, Zoe said when Olivia finished. That's incredible, Olivia. You're like the strongest person I've ever met. Olivia felt her cheeks warm at the praise. I don't know about that, she demurred. I just did what I had to do. No, seriously, Zoe insisted. To go through all that and still end up here, chasing your dreams? That's amazing. You should be really proud of yourself. As they sipped their coffees and chatted about their upcoming classes, Olivia felt a sense of belonging wash over her. For so long, her world had been limited to her mother's care and their daily struggles. Now, it was expanding in ways she'd barely dared to imagine. The rest of the day passed in a blur of syllabi reviews, campus tours, and introductory lectures. By the time Olivia climbed into her car to head home, her mind was buzzing with new information and possibilities. The drive along the coast was becoming familiar now, the winding roads and breathtaking vistas a balm to her soul after the excitement of the day. As she pulled up to Seabreeze, the sight of the Victorian house silhouetted against the setting sun still took her breath away. Inside, she found Margaret in the kitchen, humming softly as she stirred something that smelled delicious on the stove. Mom, Olivia called, dropping her bag and keys on the counter. What are you doing up? You should be resting. Margaret turned, her face lighting up at the sight of her daughter. Welcome home, sweetheart. I wanted to surprise you with dinner. How was your first day?" Olivia moved to hug her mother, noticing with a start that Margaret was standing at the stove, not seated in her wheelchair. "Mom, you're standing." Margaret's smile was radiant. "The new treatments are working wonders," she said, a hint of wonder in her voice. "I still need the chair for longer periods, but I can manage short bursts on my feet now. Dr. Patel says if I keep progressing like this, I might be able to paint standing up again soon." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes as she hugged her mother tightly. "That's incredible, Mom. I'm so happy for you." As they settled in to eat, sharing stories of their respective days, Olivia felt a profound sense of rightness. This was how it should be, both of them growing, healing, pursuing their passions. "So," Margaret said, a twinkle in her eye, "tell me everything. How were your classes? Did you make any friends? Are there any cute boys in the marine biology program?" Olivia laughed, launching into a detailed account of her day. She told her mother about Dr. Harding's inspiring lecture, about meeting Zoe, about the rush of excitement she felt every time she thought about what she was learning. Margaret listened intently, her eyes shining with pride and joy. "Oh, Olivia," she said when her daughter finally paused for breath, "I wish you could see yourself right now. You're absolutely glowing." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "I am?" she asked softly. Margaret reached across the table, squeezing her daughter's hand. "You are. It's like you've come alive in a whole new way. I always knew you were destined for great things, my sweetheart. I'm just so grateful we both get to see it happening." Later that night, as Olivia stood on the balcony of her room, looking out at the moonlit ocean, she reflected on the day's events, the excitement of learning, the joy of making a new friend, the hope inspired by her mother's progress. It all swirled together, creating a tapestry of emotions she was still learning to navigate. There were challenges ahead, she knew, balancing her studies with her mother's care, adjusting to the rigors of college life after so long away from academia, learning to let go of the constant worry that had been her companion for years. But for the first time in a long time, those challenges felt like opportunities rather than obstacles. A soft knock at her door pulled her from her reverie. "Come in," she called, turning to see her mother entering the room. Margaret joined her on the balcony, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the cool night air. For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, listening to the rhythm of the waves below. "I've been thinking," Margaret said finally, her voice soft, "about your grandmother, Charlotte, about the gift she gave us. I used to be so angry with her, you know, for staying away, for not being there when things were at their worst." Olivia nodded, remembering the complex emotions that had surfaced when they first learned of Charlotte's secret support. "But now," Margaret continued, "I think I understand. She was trying to give us the freedom to find our own way, to become the women we were meant to be. And looking at you now, seeing how you've blossomed, I think maybe she was right." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "I wish I could have known her," she said softly. Margaret smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "In a way, you do know her, her strength, her determination, her capacity for love. I see all of that in you, Olivia. You're carrying on her legacy in the most beautiful way possible." As the moon climbed higher in the sky, mother and daughter stood together, their hearts full of love, gratitude, and hope for the future. The ocean stretched out before them, vast and mysterious, much like the journey they were on. Olivia thought about the day's lessons, about the countless undiscovered wonders lurking in the depths of the sea. In a way, her own life felt like that now, full of potential, of mysteries waiting to be explored. "You know," she said, turning to her mother with a smile, "I think this is just the beginning, for both of us." Margaret nodded, her eyes shining. "I couldn't agree more, sweetheart. Here's to uncharted waters and the adventures they bring." As they hugged, the sound of the waves below seemed to whisper of possibilities, of dreams yet to be realized, of a future bright with promise. Olivia closed her eyes, breathing in the moment, feeling more alive than she ever had before. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries. But tonight, in this moment, everything was perfect. She was exactly where she was meant to be, poised on the brink of a grand adventure, with the two women who had shaped her life, her mother beside her, and the spirit of her grandmother watching over them both, cheering her on every step of the way. The autumn leaves crunched under Olivia's feet as she hurried across campus, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. It had been 2 months since her first day at the University of Maine, and the initial excitement had given way to a comfortable routine. But today, her usual calm was disturbed by a gnawing worry in the pit of her stomach. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she fished it out, already knowing who it would be. Sure enough, a message from her mother lit up the screen. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Focus on your midterm. I'll see you this evening. Love you." Olivia sighed, torn between gratitude for her mother's reassurance and frustration at her own inability to shake off her concern. Margaret had woken up with a bad headache and some muscle stiffness, common side effects of her treatment, but always a source of anxiety for Olivia. "You okay?" Zoe's voice broke through her thoughts. Her green-haired friend had fallen into step beside her, a worried frown creasing her brow. Olivia managed a small smile. "Yeah, just worried about my mom. She's not feeling great today." Zoe nodded, understanding. "But you're still going to ace this midterm, right? We didn't pull all those late-night study sessions for nothing." "Right," Olivia agreed, squaring her shoulders. "Mom would be upset if I let this throw me off." As they entered the lecture hall, Olivia took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus on the task at hand. Dr. Harding's midterm was notoriously challenging, and she needed all her wits about her. 2 hours later, Olivia emerged from the exam feeling drained but cautiously optimistic. She'd been able to answer all the questions, even the tricky essay on deep-sea ecosystems that she and Zoe had debated during their study sessions. "How'd it go?" Zoe asked, bouncing on her toes with nervous energy. Olivia allowed herself a small grin. I think it went well." "You?" "Same. God, I hope we didn't jinx it," Zoe laughed. "Hey, want to grab coffee and decompress?" Olivia hesitated, her hand already reaching for her phone. "I should probably get home." Zoe's expression softened. "Your mom would want you to celebrate finishing your first big exam, Liv. Come on, just one coffee. Then you can rush home to your Florence Nightingale duties." Recognizing the truth in her friend's words, Olivia nodded. "Okay, one coffee. But then I really do need to get back." As they settled into a cozy corner of the campus coffee shop, the aroma of freshly ground beans and baked goods helping to ease some of Olivia's tension, Zoe fixed her with a serious look. "So, spill. What's really going on? You've been on edge all week." Olivia sighed, wrapping her hands around her steaming mug. "It's just, Mom's been doing so well with her treatments. The doctors are amazed at her progress. But I can't help waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know? Like, is this too good to be true?" Zoe listened intently, her usual bubbly demeanor replaced by thoughtful concern. "That's a lot to carry around, Liv. Have you talked to your mom about how you're feeling?" Olivia shook her head. "I don't want to worry her. She's so happy that I'm here, pursuing my dreams. I don't want her to think she's holding me back." "But she's not holding you back," Zoe pointed out gently. "You are, by not letting yourself fully embrace this experience." The words hit Olivia like a splash of cold water. She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again, realizing the truth in her friend's observation. I don't know how to let go," she admitted softly. "For so long, taking care of Mom was my whole life. And now you get to have a life of your own," Zoe finished for her, "which is amazing and terrifying all at once, right?" Olivia nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. "Exactly. I love being here. I love what I'm learning. But a part of me is always back at home, wondering if Mom's okay, if she needs me." Zoe reached across the table, squeezing Olivia's hand. "That's totally normal, Liv. But you can't live with one foot in two worlds forever. It's not fair to you, and I bet it's not what your mom wants either." As Olivia drove home that evening, Zoe's words echoed in her mind. The familiar coastal road, with its stunning views of the Atlantic, seemed to mirror her internal landscape. Beautiful, vast, but with hidden depths and unseen currents. She pulled up to Seabreeze just as the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The sight of the Victorian house, now adorned with fall decorations, never failed to fill her with a sense of wonder. This was home now, in a way their tiny apartment in the city had never been. Inside, she found Margaret in the living room, curled up on the couch with a sketch pad. The lingering smell of paint in the air suggested she'd been in her studio earlier. "Mom?" Olivia called softly, not wanting to startle her if she was resting. Margaret looked up, her face breaking into a warm smile. "There's my college girl. How was the exam?" Olivia moved to sit beside her mother, noticing with relief that Margaret's color was good and her movements seemed easy. "I think it went well," she said. "How are you feeling? You had me worried this morning." Margaret waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, it was just a little flare-up. Nothing to fuss over. Doctor Patel says it's normal as my body adjusts to the new treatment protocol." Olivia nodded, trying to push down the familiar surge of anxiety. "If you're sure—" "I'm sure," Margaret said firmly. Then, her expression softening, she added, "But I appreciate your concern, sweetheart. I know this hasn't been easy for you." Something in her mother's tone made Olivia look up sharply. "What do you mean?" Margaret set aside her sketch pad, turning to face her daughter fully. "Olivia, I'm your mother. Did you think I wouldn't notice how torn you've been? How you're trying to be in two places at once?" Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm trying. I really am. I want to be fully present at school, but I can't help worrying." "Oh, my brave girl," Margaret said, pulling Olivia into a hug. "You have nothing to be sorry for. But we need to talk about this." For the next hour, mother and daughter had the conversation they'd both been avoiding. Olivia poured out her fears, her guilt, her struggle to balance her new life with her ingrained need to care for her mother. Margaret listened, her eyes full of love and understanding. "Olivia," she said when her daughter had finally run out of words, "I need you to hear me. Really hear me. I am okay. Better than okay. These treatments are working, and for the first time in years, I can see a future where MS doesn't define my entire existence." She took Olivia's hands in hers, her grip firm and sure. "But more than that, I need you to understand that your happiness, your growth, your dreams, they're not separate from my well-being. They're a vital part of it. Seeing you thrive, watching you become the incredible woman I always knew you could be, that's the best medicine I could ask for." Olivia felt a dam break inside her, tears flowing freely now. "But what if something happens? What if you need me and I'm not here?" Margaret's smile was gentle but firm. "Then we'll deal with it, together, just like we always have. But sweetheart, you can't put your life on hold waiting for a what if. That's not living, for either of us." As the evening deepened into night, Olivia and Margaret continued to talk, really talk, in a way they hadn't since the move to Maine. They laughed, they cried, they shared hopes and fears. And slowly, Olivia felt something shift inside her. The constant weight of worry didn't disappear entirely, but it lightened, making room for something new, something that felt a lot like freedom. Later, as Olivia stood on her balcony, looking out at the moonlit ocean, she felt a presence beside her. Margaret joined her, wrapping them both in a soft blanket against the chill night air. "What are you thinking?" Margaret asked softly. Olivia was quiet for a moment, sorting through the swirl of emotions. I'm thinking that maybe it's time I joined the Marine Biology Club," she said finally. "They're planning a research trip to study tide pools next month. I've been hesitating to commit, but—" Margaret's smile was radiant. "But now you're going to go," she finished, "and you're going to have an amazing time." Olivia nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and lingering trepidation. "And you'll be okay? You'll call if you need anything." "I'll be fine," Margaret assured her. In fact, she paused, a hint of mischief in her eyes. I might use the time to start planning a little art show. Nothing big, just a small local gallery. But Dr. Patel thinks it would be good for me to set a goal like that. Olivia turned to her mother, eyes wide with surprise and joy. Mom, that's incredible. Are you serious? Margaret nodded, her expression a mix of nervousness and determination. I think it's time, don't you? For both of us to really spread our wings. As they stood together, the sound of the waves below a soothing backdrop, Olivia felt a profound sense of change. The tides were shifting, not just in the ocean before them, but in their lives. It was scary, yes, but also thrilling, full of possibility. To new adventures, Olivia said softly, echoing the toast they'd shared so many times before. Margaret squeezed her daughter's hand. To new adventures, she agreed. And to the incredible women we're becoming, together and individually. The moon climbed higher in the sky, casting a silvery path across the water. Olivia took a deep breath, feeling as though she was stepping onto that shimmering road, ready to see where it might lead. For the first time in longer than she could remember, the future didn't loom as a source of anxiety, but as a canvas of infinite potential. She thought of her grandmother, Charlotte, whose love and foresight had set them on this path. Thank you, she whispered to the stars, hoping that somehow, somewhere, Charlotte could hear her. As if in response, a gentle breeze ruffled her hair, carrying with it the salt-tinged promise of adventures yet to come. Olivia smiled, ready at last to fully embrace the journey ahead, not just as her mother's caretaker, but as her own person, with dreams and ambitions all her own. The tides were shifting, and Olivia Brennan was ready to ride the wave. The gentle lapping of waves against the shoreline provided a soothing backdrop to the bustling excitement of the small Rockport Gallery. Olivia stood at the entrance, greeting guests with a warm smile and a flutter of nervous anticipation in her stomach. This wasn't just any art show, it was her mother's debut, a moment they had both been working towards for months. Olivia, a familiar voice called out. She turned to see Zoe weaving through the crowd, her green hair now streaked with vibrant blue. This is amazing. I can't believe how many people are here. Olivia laughed, hugging her friend tightly. I know. It's incredible. Mom's over the moon. She glanced towards the far end of the gallery where Margaret stood, radiant in a flowing blue dress that matched the hues of her seascapes, chatting animatedly with a group of admirers. It had been a year since their heart-to-heart conversation on the balcony, a year of tremendous growth and change for both of them. Olivia had thrown herself into her studies with renewed vigor, joining the Marine Biology Club and even participating in a summer research project studying the impact of climate change on local tide pool ecosystems. Margaret, true to her word, had focused on her art with a passion that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. Her progress in managing her MS had been nothing short of remarkable, thanks to the innovative treatments they could now afford and her own indomitable spirit. Monsieur Brennan, a tall man in a crisp suit, approached, his eyes twinkling with warmth. I'm David Carlson from the Portland Museum of Art. I wondered if I might have a word with you and your mother. Olivia's eyes widened. The Portland Museum of Art was a prestigious institution. Having a representative here was a big deal. Of course, Mr. Carlson. Please, follow me. As she led him through the gallery, Olivia's gaze swept over the paintings that lined the walls. Each one told a story, of struggle, of hope, of renewal. There were seascapes that captured the raw power and beauty of the Maine coastline, abstract pieces that seemed to pulse with emotion, and portraits that looked deep into the soul of their subjects. But it was the centerpiece of the show that always caught Olivia's breath. Titled simply Legacy, it was a triptych that spanned nearly an entire wall. The first panel showed a young woman, clearly Margaret in her youth, vibrant and full of life. The second depicted the darker years of her illness, the figure hunched and shadowed, but with a glimmer of defiance in her eyes. The third panel was a riot of color and movement, Margaret as she was now, paintbrush in hand, creating beauty from pain. And there, woven subtly throughout all three panels, were echoes of another woman, Charlotte, A gentle hand on young Margaret's shoulder, a whisper of support in the darkness, a proud smile reflecting in a mirror. It was Margaret's tribute to her mother, an acknowledgement of the love that had sustained them even when they were apart. "Mom," Olivia called softly as they approached. "There's someone here I'd like you to meet." Margaret turned, her smile brightening as she saw her daughter. "Olivia, sweetheart, I was just telling these lovely people about your research. Oh, and who's this?" As Olivia made the introductions, she marveled at the change in her mother. Gone was the frail woman who had once struggled to leave their tiny apartment. In her place stood an artist in her prime, confident and glowing with vitality. Mr. Carlson's eyes sparkled as he took in the paintings around them. "Mrs. Brennan, your work is extraordinary. The way you capture light and emotion, it's truly remarkable. I'd very much like to discuss the possibility of featuring some of your pieces in an upcoming exhibition at our museum." Margaret's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The Portland Museum? Oh my! I don't know what to say." Olivia squeezed her mother's arm supportively. "Say yes, Mom. You deserve this." As Margaret and Mr. Carlson began to discuss details, Olivia felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Zoe grinning at her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "Snuck these from the refreshment table," Zoe said with a wink, handing one to Olivia. "I'd say this calls for a celebration, wouldn't you?" Olivia accepted the glass gratefully, clinking it against Zoe's. "To new beginnings," she said, echoing the toast that had become something of a mantra for her and her mother. "And to kick-ass women who never give up," Zoe added with a grin. As they sipped their champagne, Olivia's gaze drifted back to the triptych. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the years of struggle, the unexpected twist of fate that had changed everything, and the courage it had taken for both her and Margaret to embrace their new lives. "Penny for your thoughts?" Zoe asked, nudging her gently. Olivia smiled, her eyes misty with emotion. "I was just thinking about my grandmother," she said softly. "It's about how her love is still shaping our lives even now." Zoe nodded understanding. "She'd be proud of you both, you know. Look at all you've accomplished." "Thanks, Zoe," Olivia said, giving her friend a one-armed hug. "I don't know what I would have done without your support this past year." "Hey, what are friends for?" Zoe replied with a grin. "Besides, you've supported me plenty too. Remember that all-nighter before the marine ecology final?" Olivia laughed, remembering the caffeine-fueled study session that had somehow devolved into a heated debate about the social structures of dolphin pods. It felt like a lifetime ago, and yet also just yesterday. As the evening wore on, Olivia found herself moving through the gallery, overhearing snippets of conversation about her mother's work. Words like evocative, powerful, and transcendent floated on the air, filling her with a profound sense of pride. Near the end of the night, as the crowd began to thin, Olivia felt a presence beside her. She turned to find Margaret, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Can you believe it, sweetheart?" Margaret whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "All of this. It's like a dream." Olivia wrapped an arm around her mother's shoulders, marveling at how strong and steady Margaret felt. "It's not a dream, Mom. You earned this, every bit of it." Margaret leaned into her daughter's embrace. "We earned it," she corrected gently. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Olivia. Your strength, your love, it's been my anchor through everything." Olivia felt her own eyes well up. "And you've been mine," she said softly. "And we're quite a team, aren't we?" "The best," Margaret agreed with a watery chuckle. As the last of the guests filed out, Olivia and Margaret stood together in the quiet gallery, surrounded by the fruits of their journey. The paintings seemed to glow in the soft lighting, each one a testament to resilience, to the power of love and the human spirit. "What do you think Charlotte would say if she could see us now?" Olivia mused, her gaze drawn once again to the triptych. Margaret was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "I think," she said slowly, "she would say that this is exactly what she hoped for, that we found our way not just to security, but to joy, to fulfillment." Olivia nodded, feeling the truth of those words deep in her bones. "I wish I could thank her," she said softly. "Oh, my darling girl," Margaret said, turning to cup Olivia's face in her hands. "You thank her every day. With every class you ace, every research project you tackle, every time you embrace life with that beautiful, brave heart of yours, you're living the legacy she wanted for us." Olivia felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of connection not just to her mother but to Charlotte and to all the strong women who had come before them. "Come on," she said, giving Margaret a gentle squeeze. "Let's go home. I think this calls for a celebration on the beach." As they left the gallery, arm in arm, the cool night air carried the salt scent of the ocean. The moon hung low over the water, casting a silvery path across the waves, a path that seemed to lead straight to Seabreeze, their sanctuary and launching pad. Later, as they sat on the sand, watching the play of moonlight on water, Olivia felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. The journey wasn't over. There would always be challenges to face, new horizons to explore. But now she faced the future not with fear, but with excitement. She thought about the marine biology program she was excelling in, the research opportunities opening up before her. She thought about her mother's blossoming art career, the lives Margaret's paintings were touching. She thought about the deep friendships she'd formed, the world that had opened up to them both. And she thought about Charlotte, the grandmother she'd never met but whose love had changed the course of their lives. In the whisper of the waves, Olivia could almost hear her voice, rich with pride and affection. "We did it, Grandma," she whispered to the stars. "We're really living." Beside her, Margaret squeezed her hand, as if hearing the unspoken words. No more needed to be said. They had come full circle, from struggle to triumph, from merely surviving to truly thriving. As the first light of dawn began to paint the sky, Olivia and Margaret Brennan sat together on their beach, two women transformed by love, resilience, and the courage to embrace life in all its messy, beautiful complexity. The sea stretched out before them, vast and full of possibility, much like the future they had built together. And in that moment, bathed in the golden light of a new day, they were exactly where they were meant to be,